And we do begin with that historic Democratic National Convention, which just wrapped up in Chicago. Vice President Kamala Harris is now the first woman of color to accept a major party's nomination for president. The final night of that convention was focused on introducing Harris, her career, and some of her policy goals. The mood there was electric as performers and speakers took to the stage leading up to Harris's big address. And during her keynote, Harris talked about her upbringing and life lessons she's learned, particularly from her mother, while also using those moments to explain how she plans to bring the country together if she's elected.
On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America. Our opponents in this race are out there every day denigrating America, talking about how terrible everything is. Well, my mother had another lesson she used to teach. Never let anyone tell you who you are. You show them who you are. Our nation with this election has a precious, fleeting opportunity to move past the bitterness, cynicism, and divisive battles of the past, a chance to chart a new way forward. You can always trust me to put country above party and self, to hold sacred America's fundamental principles, from the rule of law to free and fair elections to the peaceful transfer of power. Together, let us write the next great chapter in the most extraordinary story ever told.
Well, for more on last night, let's bring in NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli. He's been covering the convention and joins us now from Chicago. Mike, good morning to you. So we just heard parts of Vice President Harris's history-making address there, and there's been a lot of excitement for the previous speakers as well. So how did the audience respond to that main event?
Well, Stephen, this really has been talked about as a vibes convention. The word joy used so often from delegates we've been talking to and even from the stage to talk about this new sense of excitement around the Democratic ticket just only months into the making here. But you certainly saw that in the anticipation that was building throughout the night for Vice President Harris's remarks. You also saw that in the crowd. So many women and even a few men wearing white as a nod to the suffragist movement, the historic nature of Kamala Harris's candidacy, the potential first woman president, not lost on that audience. Interestingly, even though we heard Harris in her speech talk about her journey as an unlikely one, nodding to the fact that only a month ago there was a different nominee at the top of the ticket, she did not make explicit reference to the fact that she could make history as the first woman president. She did lean heavily on her biography throughout her remarks, talking about the influence her mother in particular had on her life. She talked about her policy goals as well, talking about the fact that, for instance, on immigration, she would sign that bipartisan reform. She really spoke out against Donald Trump, calling him an unserious person. What was so striking, though, was the way in which this convention and the vice president herself in her remarks last night tried to win back patriotism. We saw that in her criticism of the Republican ticket for denigrating America. We also saw that in what was always a highlight of every convention, 100,000 red, white, and blue balloons falling from the sky, USA signs, flags all around the arena. This was an effort to try to show that Democrats are a patriotic party and one focused on the future in contrast to the Republican ticket, Stephen.
It's certainly fascinating that she's leaving it to others to talk about the history of her nomination. Meanwhile, President Biden, he was not there, but we understand he called the vice president right before her speech. Do we know anything about what was said there?
Yeah, obviously a very bittersweet moment for the president. This was obviously a night he was expecting to accept renomination. Instead, he was in California with his family. We saw this photo, obviously, the White House tweeting it, the president saying in that tweet that he called to congratulate and wish Kamala Harris luck in her speech. He talked about the fact that he couldn't wait to watch and that she and Tim Walz would inspire the nation. The vice president using her remarks right at the top to thank President Biden. She said that she's filled with gratitude that his record record is historic and his character is inspiring. History will show that. This is a relationship, obviously, between these two that developed, especially over these last 4 years in the White House. That handoff, that clean handoff, once Biden made that decision not to run, was so important in setting up what Democrats feel was just an incredibly successful convention now.
A lot of momentum there. Even the roll call was exciting here, Mike. So what's next for the Harris campaign? It's usually a challenge to try to keep up that momentum post-convention. Do we know how they're going to spend the weekend, for example?
Yeah, it is unusual, Stephen, because momentum is such a powerful force in politics, and you would usually see the ticket travel together, barnstorm some of the battleground states coming out of the convention. We're not seeing that in this case, partially because of the unusual circumstances that led to Harris leading the ticket. She announced her running mate a bit earlier before the convention. They had that battleground state tour coming into the convention, and at the moment there is not much of a public schedule in terms of campaign events. We did see Vice President Harris and Governor Walz make the rounds last night after her speech. They went to a few parties. The vice president talking about the fact that this is still going to be a lot of work, that they're going to try and carry that momentum moving forward. She said, tonight we are partying. Tomorrow we will get back to work.
A fascinating campaign cycle. All right, Mike Memley, thanks so much. And now let's bring in NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. He was also at the convention and joins us now from Chicago. Mark, good morning to you. So there seems to be at least two major policy areas where the Harris campaign wants to set itself apart from the Trump campaign. And one, of course, is abortion, and the other is border security. Harris has been criticized, though, by some for not giving details or as many details as people want on policies. So did we learn much from her speech on those policies?
Yeah, Stephen, we actually did learn, and she ended up outlining some of the actions she would take if she becomes president. And first, when it came to abortion, and she ended up saying that if president, she would end up signing legislation into law protecting reproductive rights. And, you know, that's actually very similar to what we've seen from President Biden saying and Democrats across the country. Abortion is an issue that Democrats are leading on. They use the convention throughout the 4 days to attack Donald Trump. And Harris ended up attacking Donald Trump on the issue of abortion as well. Take a listen.
He plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Simply put, they are out of their minds.
And Stephen, of course, these attacks aren't all that surprising. Democrats have hammered Donald Trump and Republicans since Roe versus Wade's overturning. Democrats continue to hold an advantage on the issue on abortion.
Abortion and the border as well, something that she spoke about. The former president actually spent yesterday touring part of the southern border in Arizona, and he used that as a backdrop to promote his closed border policies. And on the Democratic side, so what do we know about Vice President Harris and what she's saying about her proposed border policies?
Yeah, Stephen, as I said, if Democrats had the advantage on abortion, they're facing a deficit when it comes to the border and immigration. And Donald Trump was on the border yesterday attacking her. But in the convention last night, Harris ended up using a line which she said before that she would end up as president signing into law legislation on a tough border bill, the one that Donald Trump asked Republicans to walk away from. If you recall, there was a compromise legislation in the Senate by Republicans and Democrats to bolster border funding as well as protect immigrants. And Harris ended up saying if she ends up becoming president, she would sign that legislation into law. Take a listen.
After decades in law enforcement, I know the importance of safety and security, especially at our border. Last year, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans to write the strongest border bill in decades. The Border Patrol endorsed it.
But that was the one part of immigration in her speech last night. And of course, she ended up having other ideas that she would end up actions that she would also take as president.
Yeah, more questions to come on that front. Meanwhile, we know the president, former President Trump, is planning a rally later today, also in Arizona, in Glendale, where independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is expected to attend and talk about a, quote, path forward. Now, there's been a lot of speculation that this is his plan to endorse Trump. What do we know about that?
Yeah, according to two sources, Stephen, we expect RFK Jr. to withdraw from the presidential contest and endorse Donald Trump. And we further can report that some of the people who have been encouraging RFK Jr. to drop out of the race are none other than Donald Trump Jr., the former president's son, as well as former Fox host Tucker Carlson. And so this kind of adds to the Trump world working hand in hand with Kennedy on this decision. Of course, we need to see what he ends up saying, but the expectation is that he will end up endorsing Trump.
Another wild ride. All right, Mark Murray, thanks so much. And while the former president was campaigning in Arizona, NBC News correspondent Garrett Hake had the opportunity to speak with Trump one-on-one about his plan for the border and beyond.
Former President Trump holding that event here at the border in the midst of an ongoing manhunt. We've since learned the suspect has been arrested. All of it as I pressed the former president on his immigration plans and how he'd pay for them. Former President Trump holding an event in the shadow of the Arizona border wall. As the sheriff here announced, there's a manhunt for a suspect wanted on unrelated warrants who also threatened to kill a presidential candidate. Multiple law enforcement sources tell NBC News it's Trump. The former president saying he wasn't told about the threat.
And I have great respect for Secret Service.
Trump is in the midst of a battleground blitz, with sources telling NBC News Robert Kennedy Jr. is planning to endorse him tomorrow, though talks are still ongoing. We've been reporting that RFK Jr. is getting ready to endorse you. What role would he have either with your campaign or in your administration?
Well, I don't want to get too much into it because you're telling me something I don't know, other than I've always been friendly with him. If he were going to endorse me, I would consider it a great honor.
That's despite all the things he said about vaccine, 9/11 conspiracies. Does that reflect on you if you put him in your administration?
No, it doesn't mean administration, but certainly having his endorsement, because things that he agrees on, I also agree on. You know, there are many things that are perhaps the opposite of what you're saying, but he's a respected guy.
And we asked about the Democratic convention. What do you make of the attacks against you last night?
Well, that's all they have, because they're failed. They failed on the border, as you can see. They failed on the economy. They failed on jobs.
Today, Trump going after Vice President Harris on border security.
She wants to have an open border.
But we pressed him on his plan for mass deportation. He offered no plan to pay for it. It's going to cost billions of dollars. Where will that money come from?
Well, it'll cost trillions of dollars to keep these people, and I'm talking about in particular starting with the criminals.
Earlier, we spoke to an undocumented immigrant from Mexico who came here 20 years ago and has 2 children who are American citizens. I don't think that people can possibly understand what it feels like to live with that fear of deportation, she told us. If you're trying to deport millions of people, that would perhaps include mixed families. Will you separate families to get to those goals?
Provisions will be made, but we have to get the criminals out. We have murderers in our country. They just walk in. We have over 20 million people, in my opinion, over 20 million people came in, and the number is growing every single day.
And our thanks to Garrett Hake for that report. Now to the Federal Reserve, and where Chairman Jerome Powell is expected to deliver a highly anticipated speech later today that could give new clues about the future at the central bank. Wall Street expects the Fed to start cutting interest rates next month. There are still questions about the extent and the timing of the cuts. Here to talk more about this is Investopedia's editor-in-chief, Caleb Silver. Caleb, thanks for being here this morning. So, as we mentioned, they're predicting those first rate cuts could come next month. What else are we hoping to learn from Powell's speech?
Well, we've had this uptick in unemployment, right? And we had a big revision to the job gains over the last 12 months. In fact, 818,000 fewer jobs were added than the government thought through the BLS. So that's a big deal. The Fed has 2 jobs, right? Monetary policy, keep inflation down, that's coming down, and keep us at full employment, between 3.5% and 4% employment. Well, the unemployment rate's 4.3%. We had this big revision. So is the labor market weakening enough that the Fed may have to cut more than a quarter point at that September 18th meeting? That is in 26 days, 6 hours, and 45 minutes. I'm not counting,
yeah, right.
But a lot of people are expecting this first cut. Will it be a deeper cut, a 0.5%? And then what's the pace of cuts going to be after that? Because when we look at the Fed's dot plot, which is the projection of where Fed rates should be next year, that is somewhere between 4 and 5.5%. Then it goes down to about 3 to 4% in 2026.
Well, fascinating. So if the Fed actually does end up with these cuts next month, what can people expect to be the most immediate impact that they could see?
Yeah, you're already seeing it in the mortgage market, where the 30-year fix has gone from about 7.5% to below 6.5%. That is opening up the housing market. More people applying for a mortgage, even refinancing applications are rising. You'll see it there. You'll also see it in anything you're financing, a new car payment, right? The loans, the interest rate for new cars is something like 6 to 7%, but credit card APRs is the big one, right? Yeah. Those are at 25% right now. That's a record high, and we know credit card debt is at a record high. So once those come down, that could ease borrowing costs for consumers.
That's a direct impact for consumers, certainly. While we have you here, I did want to ask about the situation with Canada's rail companies. We know that thousands of unionized workers were actually locked out yesterday, but we know the government there is trying to order some arbitration to get things back on track. What's the situation there, and how is that going to possibly impact the United States?
Well, it looks like it's going to be resolved, at least for now. Steve McKinnon, that's the Canadian Labour Minister, told the Canadian Industrial Labour Relations Board to make them get back to work and do a deal with this Teamsters, Canadian National and Canadian Pacific Kansas City. That looks like it may be resolved, but it looks like right now they're going to get back to work. Trains should be rolling later today, according to the Canadian government, and through the weekend. But this is 9,000 workers, unionized workers here, that have been locked out of their job in Canada, big exporter, and that's a big part of their economy, potash and oil.
And so for us here in the United States, when we look at the situation in Canada, obviously a really close neighbor, a trade partner as well, if they are not able to actually move that through, what does it end up happening here in the U.S.?
It just means the supply chain, which is something we were dealing with a few years ago, gets a little bit gummier right now because we do get a lot of exports from Canada, but it looks like it's going to be resolved. The operations from those railroads in the United States unaffected. It's raw material coming in from Canada that we have to worry about. That could drive prices higher. But right now, it looks like there's a resolution at play.
Supply chain. I got really tired of saying those words just a couple of years ago.
Me too.
All right. Caleb Silver, thanks so much for your time today. All right, new data this morning shows more Americans are at risk of wildfires than ever before. FEMA says at least 1 in every 3 Americans now live in areas where fires can quickly grow out of control. They say the weather conditions which allow them to spread are becoming increasingly common, and it's not just out west. NBC News national climate reporter Chase Kane shows us why this could be a record-breaking wildfire season and how forecasters are adapting.
This year has brought roughly the same number of fires as usual, but those fires have become big, burning more than 3 times as much land as last year, more than 5.5 million acres so far, filling skies with smoke coast to coast. And we're still approaching the peak season.
And a new analysis from Climate Central shows that it's being driven by an increase in the number of fire weather days, days which are hot, dry, and windy, kind of like this. It's a signature of climate change.
When you have fire weather, you can't do things like prescribed burning, at least not safely. So it really kind of gets you from both sides.
Parts of California, Colorado, Washington, and Texas have already seen more fire weather days so far this year than they typically have in an entire year. And again, the peak season is still ahead.
You can kind of think of it as like rolling a pair of dice.
Andrew Moore forecasts fire weather conditions across the U.S. from NOAA's Storm Prediction Center in Oklahoma.
And so you might have really hot, dry, windy conditions one day, but maybe you don't get the ignition, you don't get the fire. But like I said, to keep rolling those dice, and as the climate keeps getting warmer, you're just rolling the dice more and more often, so you have more chances to start big fires.
And that's part of why NOAA is expanding their fire weather team. Climate change means all 50 states face risk.
But there's definitely been an uptick in the severity of the fires, and in particular with people moving closer to the forest or embedding within the forest, the danger to society is much greater. And so we're seeing these catastrophic wildfires much more frequently within the United States.
In fact, FEMA now says 1 in every 3 Americans lives in an area like this, where homes mingle with forests and other wildlands. Some people are moving out of cities and towns to find cheaper housing, while others, even those who know the risk, just love being next to nature.
Moved up here because we just love living in the woods. Now in hindsight, second guess that.
And as Americans continue moving to areas prone to fire, FEMA says the risk area is increasing by 2 million acres every year. At the same time, human-caused climate change brings more fire weather days, even where you might not expect, like Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Virginia. In Los Angeles, I'm National Climate Reporter Chase Kane.
Well, from fires to heat, millions of Americans are under a heat alert today. So let's check in with your Morning News Now weather with meteorologist Angie Lastman. Hey, Angie.
Hi there, Stephen. We, of course, have another day of really warm temperatures across the South. I sound like a broken record when I talk about this because it's been days and days of these heat alerts, mainly centered across parts of Texas, a little bit of Oklahoma, and parts of New Mexico. So this morning, 16 million of you are included in that. Dallas, Waco, Oklahoma City, Roswell, all of those major cities are included as well. And these are likely going to last over the next couple of days. We unfortunately don't have a whole lot in the way of relief for that region of the country. But here's what we do have. Temperatures into the triple digits for Lubbock today. We're running nearly 15 degrees above normal, so it's going to be hot. It's going to be another day where the AC is cranked up, and you got to find a place to cool down. Even Denver, a little on the warm side, high 80s for you there. Dodge City, parts of Kansas, you'll end up into the mid 90s. Notice, though, how much nicer it is across parts of the Pacific Northwest. We have a little bit of some of that cool air and even some unsettled conditions kind of working their way in. So places like Reno, you're just going to top out into the low 70s today. Low 60s for Bend, Oregon. That temperature about 20 degrees below where we should be for this time of year. So as we get into tomorrow, that heat expands. It does really include most of the midsection of the country. So if you're in Cheyenne, if you're in Sioux Falls, even if you're in Wichita, your temperatures are going to be on the warm side of things. Chicago expected to go back to the 90s. I know that's going to be a little bit of a weather whiplash considering it's been feeling like fall across much of the Great Lakes and even the Northeast over the past couple of days, but it's going to feel like summer here as we get into our weekend. Even chillier out in portions of the Pacific Northwest, LA ending up into the low 70s. Now, as we get into next week, we'll still be dealing with the heat for the middle of the country, 89 on Sunday, but we get a little bit of a break for Denver into the low 80s on Monday, but we're right back to the mid 80s by the time Tuesday comes around. Similar story for St. Louis, but even warmer. We peak at 97 degrees on Monday, so hopefully not putting those summer clothes away just yet after the kind of cool air that we had settled in for a little while of this work week. But next work week, more of the same. It's going to feel like late August in a lot of spots. Chicago heads to the mid 90s for Monday. We've got the mid to upper 90s on tap for Louisville here as we get into Monday and Tuesday. And even New York City, those mid 80s take shape for the last part of our weekend. And then as we get into our work week, we'll kind of moderate out into the mid 80s. Here's a look at the big picture for your day today. It's otherwise pleasant. I mean, even across most of the East, we're talking about mainly dry conditions. A couple of trouble spots when it comes to the rain. The Pacific Northwest I mentioned, but the Rockies, you could see some of those showers and thunderstorms across that area. Denver, you're included in that. And then Florida, you have been unsettled for days and days, and unfortunately, that's not going to come to an end anytime soon. We'll still be dealing with the showers and thunderstorms across the Sunshine State, even into tomorrow, and unfortunately into Sunday, too. But a great weekend everywhere else, really, across the East. Look at all that sunshine out there, Stephen. It'll be hot, like I said, for the middle of the country, but plenty of sunshine to kind of get those last couple of weekends of summer in and any of those activities that you want. It'll be even hotter on Sunday for the middle of the country. And those Florida storms, they just won't quit to wrap up our weekend.
You know, since moving to New York, I've become familiar with the term false fall.
Oh, yes.
I really felt it. And then Starbucks with the pumpkin spice.
No, I stand against the PSL this early.
I'm surprised.
Let us just live our last couple of weekends of summer.
Let us enjoy it. Come on, y'all.
The leaves aren't turning just yet.
That's right. That should be the barometer. I like
agree.
that. See, barometer, it's a weather word.
Glad we're on the same page.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.